My 35M, mother's 58M, new fiancé wants me to call him dad. He's 24. How do I navigate this? Please buckle in because this is all so weird. I'm a 35-year-old man, and for some backstory, my dad died when I was 19, leaving my mom with me and my two siblings. I'm the oldest. It took some time, but eventually my mom started dating again. We don't live together per se, but our houses back onto each other and have a gate, so it's pretty common for her to offer to do my laundry, or me just go over for dinner, or go look after our dog, that kind of stuff. Plus, me and my siblings go over there for dinner every other Friday night or so. A bit after she started, the men she's been dating have been getting younger and younger, and I've never had a problem with them. She's been very open to me and my siblings that she wants to get married again, and we've always been supportive. At least after the initial shocks, lol. The latest guy is by far the most serious, and they've been dating since around last June. He proposed at the start of autumn, and they want to get married next summer. Again, me and my siblings are fine with this because it's her life, and we trust him. He's a nice guy, and they clearly love each other. But anyway, so long and short is, this weekend, her fiancé, let's call him Phil, calls me and asks me if I could come over. I say yeah, sure. I'll be over after work, and I assumed he just needed help with some DIY stuff they're doing. When I get over there, he calls me Sport and says we need to talk. I should mention this is something he does to me and my little brother, calling us things like kid, sport, scout, little buddy, or my personal favorite, calling us red and blue, seemingly out of nowhere. My brother is 30, by the way. He tried it with my little sister, 28, too once, and called her princess once, but he stopped when she just stared at him. So thing with Phil is that he reminds me a lot of Charlie Day's character in Horrible Bosses, in that his sole ambition has always been to meet a girl, get married, and have a family. When he told me and my brother this, my brother made some joke about how maybe our mom's going to come short on the last part, and he got very upset, but they made up after. Anyway, so I go round and I ask if my mom's around, and he says no, it's just him, and that we really need to talk man to man. I say sure, and he starts talking about how he's always wanted to be a father, etc., and raise a son to call his own, and then he drops this bombshell by saying, now I know I can never replace your father, the man who made you, but it would mean the world to me if you could call me dad. I'll admit it, I sniggered a little, and then I knew he was serious because he looked like he was about to cry, and he didn't drop it either. I asked if he really meant it, and he got really emotional and started talking about what it means to be a man, and how his purpose is to have and provide for a family, and he wants me and my siblings to be part of that family. Like he reiterated he'll never replace my father, and this did rub me the wrong way a bit, but he's ready to step up and be my dad, and provide for and protect me and my siblings. And I'm just sat there thinking, dude, I'm a decade older than you and live in a separate house. I don't need providing for, and even if I did, I don't think a guy a third of my age who works part-time at the hardware store and is into collecting manga is the man to do it. No offense if you were into that, lol. Just, I dunno, I was a bit taken aback. I was in shock, so just said, okay. And he gets emotional again, but in a happy way, talking about how he wants to go camping or go to a baseball game. I don't even like baseball, LMAO. And how he joined the Lions this year and how he wants to bring me into it too, as his boy, which just feels so surreal, even more so as I'm a Shriner, so all this talk of service and charity isn't the brag he thinks it is, because again, I'm 10 years older than this guy. Well, I ended it by just saying, this has gotten a bit too weird, and I was going home. He got very upset and I left, called my brother, and he agreed it sounds weird as fuck. Later, my mom called me, and she wasn't disappointed but admitted it's made him very upset and depressed. I told her that if he's embarrassed, he doesn't need to be. I get he's excited about the marriage, and we can just laugh this off as a funny story. She then said that wasn't what he was upset about. He, and she too a bit, is upset about the fact he poured his heart out and I rejected him. She said, yeah, it is a bit kooky, but this is how he proves to himself he's a man. And I guess I was a bit angry and said something like, first off, it's not my job to certify what's between his legs, and second, this doesn't prove he's a man. It just proves he's a nutjob. I apologized immediately, but she said she didn't want to hear it and hung up. She called back 10 minutes later, and we apologized, and she begged me to just go along with it until he has some kids to call his own. I won't go too much into the details here, but she sort of let slip they plan to try IVF treatment because she's not ready to give up on being a mom just yet. And while I, have my own thoughts about whether or not that's a good idea, I'm not here to litigate on that. We finished up fine, and I reiterated I'd support her, and she agreed that it was definitely a stressful situation for me, but begged me to at least think about it. Which leads me to here. I did think it over, and obviously I'm going to say no. I had a dad and he died. Rest in peace, Dad. And that's the only dad I've ever needed, I've ever wanted, and I'll ever bestow that title on. I'm not asking if someone's unreasonable or what I should do, more so what I should say. This clearly means a lot to him for some reason, and I deeply love my mom, so want to try and minimize the damage, especially as we're still so involved in each other's lives, and they live behind me. How can I make it clear to them, as painlessly as possible, that I think this is weird and borderline offensive? I really don't want to rip the Band-Aid off because I fear what it might do to the family. Edit. Showed my brother the post and he laughed so hard he started coughing LL, then said we should call him Dr. Phil, and each other blue and red. So swap the nicknames he gave us around. Thoughts? Edit 2. As people were asking, he has no access to my mom's money or anything like that. She rents the house, and it came pre-furnished and otherwise has no real assets. She doesn't make a lot of money anyway, so there's no pecuniary motive we could think of. Some of OP's comments. Commenter. I wonder if he grew up without a dad. He's giving a weird 1950s energy to this whole thing that feels like he only knows about dads from seeing them on the telly. OP. Oh no, his dad's still alive. Both his parents are. I've met them. They definitely feel odd about the whole situation but go along with it for his sake. Could you compromise and call him Pa? Or something? The thing is, it became apparent it's more than just a name to him. He explicitly wants to do father-son activities with me and my brother with him as the dad despite the fact we're both older than him. Commenter. If it's so important to his personal identity to find a girl, have kids with her, and raise them as their dad, it seems like marrying a 58-year-old woman with adult children significantly older than himself is a pretty ineffective way to achieve those life goals. If it's so important to him, he should find someone his own age and make that happen the normal way. It's not your responsibility to make your mom's boy toy feel like a man. You're closer to being his much older brother than his son. Weird. OP. Me and my siblings all think he has issues talking to girls his own age, and so it led to this. Commenter. I also get you were supporting your mom, but maybe question her having a kid at 58. Like, does she plan to be around for graduation? Marriages? Grandkids? It sounds like your mom is having some empty nest issues and is, illogically, trying to start over. If she got pregnant today, she would be 77 years old when her kid graduated. Considering she hasn't even started trying yet, that means she will be in her 80s when the kid graduates. That isn't realistic. Also, I have a 5 and 7-year-old and am only 38 years old and already feel tired all the time. I can't imagine what a 58-year-old would feel like. OP? Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, I don't actually see this ever going ahead, hence why I'm happy to say, yeah, of course I'll support you, because I guess I just can't imagine, push comes to shove, her actually getting the treatment greenlit. I did raise the age stuff, and she just said, people live a lot longer these days. Commenter. I don't know what his endgame is here. If it's a mental health problem, or he's trying to create some legal precedent that he intends to exploit later, but it doesn't matter. You don't need to explain, defend, or justify this decision. OP. The endgame? I genuinely think he wants to start a family, or at least pretend he's the dad of one. Ever since we met him, it's all he'd ever really go on about, and how he needs to be a dad to become a man. Very early on, he asked me if I ever planned to have kids and I said no, and he got quite taken aback, like a mixture of offense and confusion, and sort of seemed to imply I'm either gay, I am, but SSSHHH, or trans because I don't want to be a man then. Commenter. Hope it works out in the long run, but I was laughing so hard by the end. Such a crazy situation. I think you should talk with your mom and maybe hang out with her fiancé, but his bro's not some weird dad situation. OP. I have offered this, but every time me and my brother do, he definitely tries to act like the man of the group or sets us up for more explicit father-son activities or just talks about how desperate he is to be a father. A personal favorite was a time when he got his phone out and started reading some pearls of wisdom he'd obviously found online. His probable low self-esteem. Yeah, I want to be gentle because I do think he has that warped self-esteem and a lot of other issues. Definitely not all with it. I do know his parents and they're totally normal. Nice people who go along with this for his sake. He's mentioned internet friends and friends from a D&D group, but I've never met them. Me and my siblings have tried talking with his parents, but from the way they've come across, they really don't want to get involved any more than they have to, unfortunately. But thank you. Hopefully the conclusion of this will be gentle. Update 1. Anyway, so I told both my siblings, and we agreed we'd collectively put our foot down with Phil at our next family dinner next week. Especially after an incident where Phil referred to my brother as sport and asked if he wanted to go see a baseball game with him. Admittedly, I was a bit spurred on by what you all said and got involved, pinging him back with, no tickets for me, Daddy, and my brother responded with, Daddy wants to me all to himself, Hot. And Phil took a few minutes to respond before saying he was shocked, speechless, and disgusted. He then messaged me in private to say he was utterly appalled, and that he'd never disrespect his own father the way you boys did. I kind of lost it at this point and said, right, that's because you're not my father, Phil. You're a 24-year-old man-child dating my mother. You have no right to my respect, especially not to the respect a father gets. I immediately said sorry, but then blocked his number and left the group chat. Apparently, he sent a similar thing to my brother, who responded with more daddy stuff, and Phil blocked him. Well, that aside, I don't think that family dinner is going ahead. After the original post blew up, it seems someone from his Lions Club found it and reported it to their chair or whatever, and Phil has either been expelled or resigned or in the process of one of the two. He has removed nearly all mentions of the Lions from his social media and no longer mentions being a member, with his last post on it being some cryptic goodbye post where he kinda drones on about what it means to be a man in the modern day and the duty of fatherhood bestowed on all men at birth. Really weird shit. My mom called me half in a panic, half in a rage after, about the stuff I'd been telling about him before breaking down and saying we need to meet, which we did, and got my brother to go over too. I know he has temporarily moved back in with his parents in the next town over, but from my understanding, they still want to go ahead with the wedding. But I think that's more so because they've already spent money on it. When she said she was determined to have more kids, plural, my brother did step up and asked if she really thought that was a good idea at her age, and I pointed out that assuming she had the baby next year, and she lived to 80, they still wouldn't have finished college. She just stammered on about how people live longer these days, before breaking down crying and admitting she's not ready to give up on mothering due to some deep-seated trauma and fears about the family breaking apart that I won't go into for her sake. When we reassured her that we weren't going anywhere, she calmed down, and we had a very good honest conversation where she's agreed to drop the IVF stuff on the grounds that it'd be too expensive and unlikely to get greenlit, but she's still adamant it's scientifically possible, and she should be allowed to do it from an ethical standpoint because she has to win that argument, uneasy face, and has agreed to look into fostering instead. Me and my brother highly doubt anything will ever come of that, so we're not that worried anymore. The very good news is she's also agreed to look into therapy/psychiatric help to deal with her trauma, and we've helped get her in touch with a nice lady in town to unpack all this in a more healthy way. So at least one person is getting the help they need. I have no idea what's happened with Phil or what's going to happen with him, but I did make it clear to my mom that he is not my dad. He's not even my stepdad. I'm not a kid. And he's never going to be either one outside of legal fuckery. She relented pretty quickly. I think she's finally broken out of her shell at least. And we've agreed that if things go ahead, that's going to be a huge red line, though I dunno if he'll want to be friends with me after all this LMAO. Anyway, thanks for the help on the original post, y'all. Edit. Bit of an update as I can't respond to everybody, but I think the marriage is off. Phil has gone AWOL again and has had a huge argument with his family as they've demanded he call off the wedding and date people his own age. This apparently made him snap. Me and my mom have met his mom and older brother, who said Phil is very insecure around girls his own age and has never been able to talk them, hence his preference. This very deeply upset my mom, and after some begging from all of us, she has agreed to push the wedding back, though she wants to keep dating him. I have no idea where Phil is, though his brother assumes he's couch surfing with his D&D friends who have been sending me and my brother some not nice messages because clearly we're just jealous of the MILF hunter. If any of you socially inept fucks are reading this, I don't need to chase middle-aged folk because I can talk to boys my own age like a normal person. Peace. Update 2. Hey Reddit. Buckle up, because if you thought things were wild before, it somehow got wilder. I don't even know how to process half of this, so I'm just gonna spill it here. First off, Phil's been found. He wasn't couch surfing with his D&D buddies like his brother thought. Oh no, he was camping in the woods. Not in a fun outdoorsy getaway kind of way, but like some intense, soul-searching, I'm a lone wolf nonsense. We only know this because his mom, his actual mom, drove out to the campsite after one of his friends told her where he was. She found him scribbling in a notebook, surrounded by empty energy drink cans, and mumbling about rites of passage. She brought him home, but he's apparently refusing to talk to anyone, including my mom. So naturally, my mom is spiraling again. She calls me and my brother, because who else? And says we need to come together as a family to figure out how to help Phil rediscover himself. I told her point blank, Mom, I'm not taking life advice from a guy whose idea of a survival kit is Monster Energy and a notebook. She didn't find it funny. My brother, meanwhile, doubled down on the jokes and started referring to him as Forrest Dad, which I admit did make me snort laugh. Then comes the kicker. Phil apparently wrote a manifesto. Yes, you read that right. A manifesto. His mom found it in his tent and handed it over to my mom. She, of course, sent us a few pages. And let me tell you, it's a trip. The gist of it is that Phil feels he's failing his divine mission to be a father figure to those in need, aka me and my siblings. And he's blaming us for rejecting his paternal love. He also mentioned something about wanting to create a legacy that transcends time, which is apparently why he's so desperate to have kids either biologically or spiritually. At this point, I asked my mom if she really wanted to be involved with a guy who writes about spiritual fatherhood while hiding in the woods. She got defensive and said he's just misunderstood and grieving the idea of the family he never had. I told her she needs to stop treating Phil like some tragic hero from a soap opera because the dude's just plain weird. This led to yet another heated discussion where she accused me of being heartless and not understanding what it's like to lose hope. I reminded her that I literally lost my dad and didn't go on a camping bender to cope. Anyway, fast forward to last night. Phil finally reached out to my mom. He apologized for disappearing but said he's not ready to face me or my brother yet because our betrayal has cut too deep. My mom begged him to reconsider the wedding, but he said he needs time to reassess his purpose. I was hoping this would be the end of it, but no. My mom, bless her heart, decided to double down and asked me to consider writing Phil a letter to open up a dialogue. A letter to the guy who wants me to call him dad. I told her absolutely not, and she got furious. She said I'm being immature, and that real men know how to resolve conflicts without running away. I told her maybe she should pass that advice along to Forrest's dad. She hung up on me. And here's the cherry on top. Phil's D&D friends have now decided to DM me and my brother en masse. Apparently, we're destroying Phil's dream and need to apologize for undermining his journey. One of them even said, "You should be honored he wants to father you." Most men wouldn't step up like that. I told them to kindly piss off and maybe spend their energy helping Phil find a therapist instead of writing creepy messages to grown men on the internet. So yeah, my mom's still hoping the wedding can be saved. Phil's MIA again, and I'm seriously considering moving to another state just to get some peace. But who knows? Maybe Phil will come back from the woods with a new perspective or maybe a spear and a loincloth. At this point, nothing would surprise me. Edit. If I get one more DM about being jealous of Phil or needing a father figure, I swear I'm gonna lose it. I have a dad. He's just, not alive anymore. Also, to whoever sent me that weird meme about Daddy Phil disciplining his boys, seek help. Update 3 first, an update on Phil. He's apparently back home now, but he's on some sort of self-imposed exile. According to his mom, he's dedicating himself to introspection and has taken a vow of emotional silence, which, as far as I can tell, means he's walking around his parents' house barefoot in sweatpants and not speaking to anyone except his dog, who he's renamed Comet. Why Comet? No clue. Now, you'd think this would be the end of it, Phil doing his little monk routine and my mom finally realizing this guy might not be marriage material. But no, my mom? She's doubling down. She shows up at my house unannounced last night. I open the door, and there she is, holding a stack of papers and looking like she's about to give a TED Talk. She marches in without waiting for an invite and says, "I've been doing some reading, and I think I understand what's going on with Phil." Great. Here we go. She plops down on my couch, spreads out her papers, and starts talking about how Phil is experiencing something called a crisis of masculine identity. According to her newfound internet research, this happens to men who feel disconnected from traditional roles and are searching for purpose. She says it explains why Phil wants to be a father so badly. It's not about us. It's about him finding his place in the universe. I tell her, that's great, Mom. But maybe he should work on finding his place in the universe without making his fiancé's adult children pretend he's their dad. She says I'm being narrow-minded and that I need to meet Phil where he is. I respond that I'd rather meet him at the nearest Greyhound station and wave goodbye. That's when she drops the real bombshell. She's planning a healing retreat for the whole family. Yep. She thinks the only way to fix all this is for me, my siblings, and Phil to go on a weekend getaway to reconnect and heal our family bonds. She says she's already found a cabin to rent and thinks we should do team-building exercises and spiritual activities. Oh, and Phil wants us to call him Dad for the entire trip, just to try it out. I laughed. I couldn't help it. She looked so offended, but I genuinely thought she was joking. She wasn't. She's dead serious. I asked if she really thought this was a good idea, and she said it's the only way to move forward as a family. My brother, who was on speakerphone during all this, chimed in with, "Yeah, sorry, I'm busy that weekend. Forever. Actually." But here's where things get even more ridiculous. Phil has apparently invited his D&D buddies to facilitate the retreat. My mom says they're going to lead some bonding activities, which I'm 99% sure means they're gonna make us roll dice and fight imaginary dragons. She's acting like this is some groundbreaking therapy, but I'm picturing me and my brother sitting around a campfire while some guy named Thorgar the Mighty tells us to embrace the wisdom of the dice. Needless to say, I told her there's no way I'm going. She got all huffy and said I was being selfish and that Phil is putting himself out there to try and connect with us. I told her if Phil wants to connect, he can start by not acting like a medieval cult leader. The conversation ended with her storming out and muttering about how she can't do this alone. My brother texted me afterward, suggesting we just go on the retreat and accidentally get lost in the woods for 3 days. I'm honestly considering it. As for Phil, he's apparently thrilled about the retreat idea and has been writing out father-son bonding activities for me and my brother. My sister, who's been mostly silent through all this, texted me a screenshot of one of the activities he sent her. It's called the Legacy Journal, and it involves us writing letters to our future selves about the kind of men we want to be. She replied to him with, "I'm a woman," and he just sent a thumbs-up emoji. I don't know where this is all headed, but I'm seriously considering moving to a different hemisphere at this point. Stay tuned. Or don't. Honestly, I wouldn't blame you. Edit. My brother has officially renamed the group chat to Dungeons and Daddy Issues. I'm crying. Final update. All right, Reddit. It's over. The Forest Dad Chronicles have finally reached their conclusion, and let me tell you, it ended in a way I never saw coming. Strap in, because this is going to be a ride. So, the infamous healing retreat happened, but not in the way anyone planned. Spoiler. It ended in complete disaster, and honestly, I'm just glad to be back home with my sanity mostly intact. My brother, my sister, and I begrudgingly agreed to go not because we thought it was a good idea, but because we wanted to make sure my mom didn't end up in the middle of nowhere alone with Phil and his merry band of D&D misfits. We drove up together, all of us swapping dark humor jokes about how this was either going to end in a Lifetime movie or a Dateline special. The retreat was at this tiny, run-down cabin that screamed horror movie. Phil was already there, standing in the driveway with a clipboard and a nervous smile. His D&D buddies were inside setting up activity stations. It was exactly as cringy as it sounds. There were homemade banners with slogans like "Forge the Bond" and "Honor the Legacy." One of them had brought an actual sword for symbolic rites of passage. Things went off the rails almost immediately. The first activity was supposed to be a trust exercise where we blindfolded each other and were led through the woods. My brother, bless his chaotic heart, intentionally walked Phil into a tree by accident. Phil got mad. My brother called him Dad in the most sarcastic tone possible, and that set the tone for the rest of the day. The second activity was even worse. It was this pseudo-therapy session where we were supposed to share our deepest fears, while Phil, as the patriarch, offered us guidance. My sister said she feared she'd never understand why our mom was doing this. My brother said he feared accidentally laughing at Phil and his D&D friends and getting kicked out of the retreat. And me? I just said I feared Phil might actually try to pull a sword on me if I called him dude instead of dad. Phil did not find this funny. The real breaking point, though, was during dinner. Phil stood up to give this long-winded speech about family unity and how he was honored to step into the role of fatherhood. He said he believed this retreat was a turning point and that we'd leave this place forever changed. My brother, who had clearly reached his limit, interrupted him with, "Yeah, I'm leaving this place with the exact same dad I came in with, none." That's when Phil snapped. He slammed his hands on the table and started yelling about how he's done everything to prove himself and how we're ungrateful brats who don't deserve his love and guidance. He said we'd ruined his dream and shattered his purpose. It got so bad that even his D&D buddies were awkwardly trying to calm him down. My mom, meanwhile, was crying quietly into her wine glass. Then came the final, glorious meltdown. Phil grabbed the sword, yes, the actual sword, and declared he was cutting ties with us and would be stepping down as patriarch. He stormed out of the cabin, sword in hand, and disappeared into the woods. I wish I were joking. We all just sat there in stunned silence for a few minutes before my brother said, "Well, I guess Dad went out for milk and never came back." That broke the tension, and we all started laughing. Even my mom cracked a smile through her tears. Eventually, one of Phil's friends went to look for him, while the rest of us started packing up. My mom apologized profusely, saying she hadn't realized how bad things had gotten. She admitted she'd been ignoring all the red flags because she was so desperate to feel loved again. We hugged it out, and she promised to end things with Phil. And she did. Phil showed up at my mom's house 2 days later, still carrying the sword, and begged her to take him back. She said no. Apparently, he went on some rant about how she was choosing disloyal children over a real man, and she calmly told him to leave. He's since been blocked on everything. As for us, My mom has been seeing the therapist we helped her find, and she's genuinely doing better. She says she's taking a break from dating to focus on herself, and honestly, I'm proud of her for it. My brother and I have been cracking dad jokes nonstop, which my mom finds equal parts annoying and hilarious. Phil? From what we've heard through the grapevine, he's moved in with his D&D buddies and is now running some kind of men's empowerment podcast. We haven't listened, but my brother did joke that the first episode is probably called How to Lose a Family in 10 Days. And that's it. The wedding's off, Phil's out of our lives, and my mom's on the road to healing. It's been a wild ride, but I think we're finally back to normal. Thanks for following along, Reddit. It's been cathartic sharing this madness with you. Here's hoping my next post is about something way less dramatic. Like, I don't know, how to fix my lawnmower. Peace. Edit. For those asking, no, we never found out what happened to the sword. My brother swears Phil probably sleeps with it under his pillow.